Okie doke. So welcome everybody to Art 192 and Art 192B. It's Photoshop and Advanced Photoshop / digital imaging. This is our second webinar of the semester. It's now being offered only online. I have recorded videos of all the tutorials that are available both on YouTube and on Canvas. So if you want to stick around and you want me to demonstrate live for you, I will be happy to do so. Otherwise, if all of you would prefer to leave and just watch the recorded video with all of its mistakes and its guffaws, and it's unedited, but it will cover the first lesson. If you watch that first, the video for this week, for second video, I can't speak. To watch the second lecture on Canvas. And you can also go directly to YouTube for that too. So it will be entirely up to you. What I do want to do though is I want to address the advanced class first. That since I'm assuming that, well, you are in the advanced class so that you are familiar with all the basic tools in Photoshop and understand how to use it pretty well. Rather than start with lessons, I want you to start with an assignment. And that first assignment is what I call the Invisible Man project. So you can get started with that today. And what you need to do is to go to my handouts page. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to go back to here and I will show you where that is. If you don't know, everybody should be able to see this. If you can't, please raise your hand or let me know. But anyway, I'm going to switch from this week in class to handouts. If we scroll down here and we go to Art 192, this is the Invisible Man project right here. Okay. So we're not, well, if you do have access to a scanner, you're welcome to scan a photograph. But most people don't do that anymore. We start with digital images. So I would prefer that you start with a high resolution image. If you can't get one at 300 pixels per inch or dots per inch, then try to get something that's between 200 and 240. And the size of the image should fit comfortably on an 8x10 format, either vertically or horizontally. And that will be the size of your final project. You can use magazines, books, whatever for your source material or images off the internet, as long as they are high resolution. And what I want you to do is similar to what I showed you the other day. So let me go back. And again, you're going to turn this in as a Photoshop file, a .psd. And it'll be due in between 3 to 4 weeks. And so let me go to Kirk's classes. Let's look at some of my samples here. And it's this one right here. This probably isn't the best one, but it is a good one. He did a good, Jacob did a good job on this. So when you find a photograph, it has to be, it can be of artwork. It doesn't have to be a photograph of a person, but it has to have people in it. And what you need to do to demonstrate to me that you understand some of the basics of Photoshop and are ready to move on to an advanced level is to digitally erase anywhere where there's skin or flesh. Okay. And then as needed, for example, the underside of the hat, the inside of the collar, his hand was wrapped around the neck of the guitar. You're going to have to recreate that in some way. And that might be taking parts of image from elsewhere and restoring it. It might be building it from scratch. Oh, you don't see it on my computer screen? Okay, then hold on here. Let me redo that. So I'm going to, I apologize. So I'm going to stop sharing for a moment. Oh, wait. No wonder. I forgot to start sharing my screen. Well, duh. My bad. You're only looking at me. So here we go. I'm not thinking here. Can you see now, Nick? Yeah, I forgot to share the screen. I started the recording, but I forgot to share the screen. So, I mean, I can zoom in a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. Now, because this is a black and white photograph and because it's, you know, been copied several times and stuff, and it might be how I brought this into the web, you really can't see the underside of his hat that well, but there is a vacuum, kind of a volume of where his head would be. So that you would have to recreate, you know, with his head here, you'd be missing a good chunk of that. So that has to be recreated. You can go online and do Google searches and you can find inserts for collars and things like this. This is not an assignment of, you know, something that I made up. It was something at the time that I thought looked kind of cool that people were doing in Photoshop, and you can do. So that's what you guys are going to be starting with. And if you want to, you know, if you don't have Photoshop yet, if you want to wait a day or two, you can. But then what you should do is to start with lesson 13 on saving images for the web. Okay. So you are responsible in the advanced class for the only lessons that you're required to do in the advanced class are 13, 14, and 15 in the textbook. That's all. Now, Nick, since you took Chris Wilson, you might want to go over lessons 1 through 12 and see if there's anything that Chris missed or you need to brush up on, or you want to know more about, or for whatever reason, and then you can join us for those lessons that I will be covering. Okay. But what you need to get started with is doing some research, finding an image that you can immerse yourself in. Another one that I think would be a really good one to use, for example, if we were going to do a search, and instead of a person, would be to do a painting maybe. And I'm going to do the Arnold Feeney portrait by Jan van Eyck. Okay, so that's this one right here. So if I start to look at images, so I'm just doing a simple Google search. But what I want to do, and if this should be helpful for the rest of you too when you start to work on some of the projects, is that when I do a Google search, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look under tools, and then under let's see, I want under size, I want to make sure that it's a large image, and that should screen out some of the other ones. Color type, I guess any type would be fine. I don't want a GIF. And one of the mistakes that I'm doing right now is I'm using Google, I'm using Google Chrome is my my browser, and other browsers like Firefox and will work better when you're ready to download your image. So I don't know how big this is, but I'll go ahead and I'll click on it and I'm going to see. And this is a biggie. Well, this would be a good one to start with. See, that's 3,087 pixels by 4,226. So now I can go ahead and I can right click on this and I can download the image, or just save the image as. I'm going to go ahead and save it on my desktop. okay? Just for the time being show you how to do this, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and save that. And hopefully it is an image that I can open in readily in Photoshop, because now Google is having us save files in a different format when you download them. So I need to see, there's the Arnolfini, and it is a JPEG, cool. So I'm gonna take that JPEG and I'm gonna go ahead and open it in Photoshop. And there you have it. It's a nice big image. So by way of introduction to the advanced class, could also be something that will be helpful for those of you in the beginning class, is that one of the things that you need to take note of is that, how big is this image? And so if I turn off rulers, that's Command R, and then I turn them back on, you can see that it's quite large. This is like over 40 inches wide by 60 inches deep, but that's at 72 pixels per inch. So what I need to do is I need to go under image size to see exactly how big this is. And you can see that that's what it is at 72 pixels per inch. How did I know it was 72 pixels per inch? Because that's the screen resolution. That's what you see on the internet. So to make this ready for print, what I would need to do is I would need to make sure that resample was turned off under image size and change this, let's say, to 240. And what it does is it resizes it at a higher resolution, but without any loss of resolution or any pixels. So now I can save this like so. It looks the same, but now when you look at the rulers, you can see that it's a little over 12 by 18 inches. That is plenty big. That's really good. So now what my goal is to take where his hand is. These are the easy parts here where the hands are. To erase those and use content-aware fill features or content-aware, use the clone stamp or things like that to get rid of it. And to put, his clothing in here as needed, but you may also need to create the hollow of where his sleeves are, and the same with her. Now, the way that she is posed, you wouldn't see anything. Where the challenge is going to be will be especially difficult, will be for Arnolfini's wife, that when you remove her face, to create a viable inside of her veil or the scarf or whatever it is that's covering her head. His hat would be a little bit easier to do, okay? And it needs to look seamless when you're done. Those are the only areas that contain skin, but this would be a good one to do, okay? So Nick, does that help you out at all? That's what you need to start working on. Okay, so that's what everybody else in the advanced class, and there are quite a number of you need to do. The other question I have for those of you in the advanced class is that I only had a couple of people show up yesterday at the 2 o'clock hour on Tuesday, Thursday, even though there's several people that are signed up for the advanced class. If you would rather me to join these two together and we just meet on Mondays and Wednesdays, and if you have questions, fine. If you want to share your work, fine. Or if you want to set something up for the Tuesday, Thursday time slot for individual instruction, that would be okay too. But I just need to hear back from you guys. You can think about it. I don't need to hear about it today, but if you know, let me know. And because typically I will sign in on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 o'clock. I'll wait around for 20 minutes, a half an hour. But if no one shows up, then I close it off. Okay, and then we're done. Okie doke. Okay, so that's the advanced class. I've used 20 minutes of my time for that. Now, for the introductory class, ready to do, hold on here. Let me bring this back up. There we go. So I need to hear from the rest of you in the intro class. And do you want me to repeat the lecture that I have recorded on YouTube and Canvas? And I can do that today. I can spend the next 40 minutes covering the basics. Otherwise, if you would rather leave the webinar and do it on your own and on your own time and watch the video, then that's fine too. But I need to hear from all of you. So if you could put information, let me know what you want to do, or just sign off. That will give me an idea of what what you want to do. And you will be watching the video, and I will continue now to cover this lesson from beginning to end. Any thoughts from anybody? No? You want me to continue? I'll take that as a yes. Or has everybody gone back to bed? Or maybe gone off and started watching TV or something? Okay. Okie doke. So I will go ahead and I'll continue with this. So I've opened up Photoshop, and I presume that everybody has access to it. I'm going to place my image down here at the bottom. So let's go over, shoot, I'm getting messages here that I don't want. So this is the end of our first lesson, and it gives you a basic introduction to some of the basic tools and processes of Photoshop. And if we look at not the end, but we look at the start file, this is what the start file looks like. All right. So we want to go from here, and we want to end up here. And how do we do that? Well, let me first give you a tour of the desktop in Photoshop. Over to the left, we have all of our tools. Well, if you have the textbook, you can go over all of these and what they do, and I will gradually do that as well. If you look at the top, we have our options menu here. We also, with Photoshop selected, under the tabs up here, under these menu items, there are a number of elements that are, and tools and panels that are available from here. There's a lot of redundancy built into all of Adobe software. Over to the right, we have additional panels which add functionality to the tools that are selected over here. For example, we have our color panel. In addition to that, we have swatches, we have gradients, and we have patterns. These are all part of the same function. Depending on what tool you're using, you can do that. For adjustment layers, we have adjustments, okay? Different adjustments that we're going to start using today that add functionality and allow you to change your image significantly and to basically autocorrect or manually correct your photographs, which you will do quite a bit. This gives us our basic properties. Now, depending on the tools that are selected, we'll determine what properties are selected. But this allows me to transform the image from here, do alignments, do a variety of things. And at the bottom down here, we have a panel for layers. Layers are really important, so are channels. But layers you will use a lot. A lot. Okay. In addition to that, at the very top right-hand corner here, if you can see where I'm clicking right here, it says Workspace. You'll see that I have Kirk's Workspace, Each one is named a little bit differently. But right now I have Essentials selected. There is a workspace for 3D. There's a workspace for motion, which we will use later this semester. Workspace for painting. For those of you who are taking any digital photography classes, you'll probably want to use a photography workspace. And there's the graphic and web workspace. These can all be edited, or as I've done here, you can create a new one. And at any time you can reset. So if I go ahead and I have essentials selected, I can go ahead and I can reset essentials, see what it looks like. And it's, excuse me, a little bit different, but I can customize it. So for example, if I prefer to have, keep all of these intact here, but under the Windows menu, maybe I like having the character panel visible, okay? So this is, if you don't see the panels here, they will be found, most of them, under the window menu. And I can go ahead and I can bring this over here because we will be using that. But maybe I enjoy that. So if I quit Photoshop now and open it back up, it will go back to this. But let's say I want to create a new custom workspace. Well, I can do that from here. I can go ahead and I can select new workspace and I can name it. I'm just going to leave it untitled right now. And you can create custom key shortcuts. You can add, add menus, toolbars, anything. And now, if I go back to essentials, again, it's going to go back to where I've just changed it. But if I reset essentials, it resets it to its default settings. But I can also go back here and I can go to the untitled one that I just created and it brings that back. So that's what you can do. And you can delete any of those desktops, but it's a way of customizing what you're doing. So again, we have all of our tools over here that we'll get acquainted with shortly. We have our options menu right here. We have our other menus specific to Photoshop up here, and we have our panels to the right. And if you don't see the panels that you're looking for, they will be found. Let's see, let me move this up. The panels will be found, most of them, under the window menu here. And this keeps popping up here, and I don't know why. Okay. So before I do this lesson, well, there's one more thing to show you. That, for example, let's say I want to show the beginning and the end. What I can do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close some of these files. And I don't want to save it. But let's say I want the start file and the end file to be visible. I can go to Window, and I can show Arrange, and I can select, for example, I want Arrange, I want 2 up vertically. And you'll notice that it shows these 2 vertically now. So now I can see the before and the after, and this is a nice way to work on many of the lessons. So you can, as you're completing them, you can compare your solution to theirs. So I'll leave that there for the moment. What I want to cover next, while I have time, is explain to you what Photoshop is that it is a bitmap / raster program. What does that mean? That means that when you zoom in on this image, either this one or this one, and you go all the way in, you can see that it's comprised of pixels. And that means, what you need to know in advance when you're working in Photoshop, what the purpose of your file is for. And you need to know the size that you need it. And that will determine what resolution and you will need, and it will determine the size that you need. And those are generally determined at the onset when you create a new file. So for example, when I create a new file here, I can go to New, and I can pick from some default sizes, or I can switch from pixels 2 inches, and I can say, you know what? I want something that's, the width is 8.5 inches or 8.5 inches. And I want the height to be 11. So that's letter size. And I want it to be 240, or maybe the desired resolution for print would be 300 pixels per inch. I can work in RGB color. I can leave the background white, and I can go ahead and I can create. And there we go. I have my desired size. So I don't want to do that. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close that file. But that's a good way to get started. Okay, you need to know when you're working in Photoshop, again, the 2 things that are most important is what is the purpose of it. For print, you generally work at 240 to 300 pixels per inch. And you need to know the actual physical size because it will be printed. For the web, on the other hand, you need only know that you also should know the physical size, but it will be measured generally in pixels. And you'll know by default that the resolution for a screen or monitor for the web would be 72 pixels per inch, or for the PC, 96. But for our class, 72 pixels per inch is just fine. Okie doke. So now, for those of you who have maybe worked in Illustrator, that would be, that's a very different kind of program. And that's a vector object-oriented program. Okay, so what is the difference between these two? And I'm going to tell you right now, and then I will show you and demonstrate the difference. And I will use Adobe Illustrator to make that demonstration and to make my point. But a vector or object-oriented program, all the images that you create in those programs are defined by mathematics. So resolution is not an issue. And where that can be advantageous is that, for example, if you're designing a logo for a company that's really flat, 2-dimensional graphic, and you're just designing your letterhead, envelope, and calling card, kind of basic company, information. Maybe you design the logo at 1 inch by 1 inch, and they really, really like it. And you used Illustrator to do that, or a vector program to do that. And they say, I really like that. Now I want it on the side of my trucks. I want it on, 30 feet high on the side of our building. Well, do you need to use another program to do that or to make changes? No, you do not. You can take the same image, and depending on your output device, you can use the very same file and output it at that size. That's the difference. With Photoshop, you can't do that. Again, you would need to know the size in advance and the resolution that you need for that size of that image. So how would that work? I'm going to go ahead and open up Adobe Illustrator, which may take a couple of minutes. I should have had it open from the beginning. It's verifying. So let's, while I'm talking, it's just that in Illustrator, it's easier for me to demonstrate this difference. I can convert these images to vector, but since we're starting with vector, it's easier to start with vector and then rasterize. So that's what I'm doing here. I've got a bunch of stuff open on my computer, so it's probably working a little bit slow at the moment. So be patient with me. And we still have a half an hour left, so we're in good shape. Show you how to do this. Come on, come on, come on, come on. I'm getting impatient. Come on, come on. It's initializing all these steps. I don't know that I need all of that. Okay, come on, come on. There we go. Almost. There we go. So I want a new file. I'm going to pick from here. I don't want a custom size. I don't want a postcard size. let's pick from, I'm going to create a new document here. And I'm just going to pick from print. And I want 8.5 by 11. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay. And again, there's nothing in there for resolution. Okie doke. So here we are. So I'll start by creating a simple circle here. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Come on. Wrong tool. Where's my ellipse tool? My bad. Okay. Let me go ahead and let's bring up our color panel here. I need to bring up swatches. So I'm going to go to Window, and this is similar to Photoshop. So I want to bring up swatches. Swatches is up. It's already here. So I'm not paying attention. And I'm going to put in here, I'm going to put a pattern fill. Okay. So what makes this unique, as I said, because it is vector, I can zoom in. So I can zoom way in. And do you see? Come on. Let me zoom back out. I'm having troubles here. Come on. Let me go to view, and I'm just going to view preview size. I want 100%. So let me zoom out here and see what I have. There it is. It's over there. And I'm going to go ahead and zoom back in. Command plus. Trying to make it large for all of you. And again, my computer's acting a little sluggish at the moment. And there's that bit of lag that's causing me problems here. There we go. That's big enough. Okay. So when I've zoomed way in, do you see any pixels the way we did in Photoshop? And the right answer is no, you don't. So that's the advantage, because this is a flat two-dimensional image to working in a program like Adobe Illustrator. But if I select the file or the image, and I hold down the Option key and I make a copy of it, okay, and I decide to rasterize it, and you would have to rasterize this for the web. And in most instances, there are scalable vector graphics that you can create, but this wouldn't be one of those instances. But I can select Object, and I can select Rasterize, and it's going to give me an options here. Do I want RGB, CMYK color, what resolution? And to demonstrate my point, I'm going to use screen resolution at 72 pixels per inch. I'll click OK. And now watch what happens. When I zoom in on this, very quickly, you can see all the individual pixels that are used to comprise that image. Well, that's what Photoshop is about. It's about raster or pixel images. Now, say, well, why would I ever want to use a raster image? And this is the lag that's being caused on my computer. And the reason is that for photographic material, there's or images, there are, gradations in color, from light to dark, or subtle changes that take place. There's a lot of image density of the image, which you don't have in a 2D flat image. And so that would be the advantage of using a raster program like Photoshop, okay? But for flat 2D images, hands down, Illustrator would be the way to go. Okay, so I don't want to save any of that. I'm going to close it, and I'm going to go back to Photoshop. There we go. So let's go ahead and let me show you how to, some of the basics in here, and I may have covered it a little bit differently in the previous semester, but we're going to take this image now, and we're going to make it look like this one. to give you an idea of some of the basic things that you do in Photoshop. So I'm going to make sure that I have layers available, and you'll notice that in layers that one of these layers is turned off. And they do provide us the happy birthday banner in the upper left-hand corner. Okay, so you can turn a layer on or off. And the goal is in most of these programs, and Photoshop is no exception, to isolate different images, different parts of your images on different layers, but in the composite form, they appear to be a single image. And if the images are turned on and you print it, or the layers are turned on and visible and you print it, that's what it's going to look like. If you decide that you want to print the image without a particular layer, you just make it invisible, turn it off, and print it again, and it won't be visible. So that's the advantage of that. And why is that important? Because then you can work non-destructively. You can work and create a variety of options or variations of your image and leave them all in the same file. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I have the background image selected. Now this is something that isn't discussed in the textbook, but it's something that I regularly recommend that you do, is that you never work on your original background image because you may inadvertently mess it up. And that would be a destructive way of working. So I'm gonna, anytime and if I forget, let me know. Sometimes I can't, talk and chew gum at the same time. So, but for all of my own things, I make sure that I copy that background layer and then work on the copy, not on the original. So if I mess up, I can always go back to the original and start over again without too much muss or fuss, or start from a basic point. So to make a copy of this, there's a couple of ways that we can work. I can click and drag on the new layer image here. That makes a copy of it. I can also use key commands, and that's something that over this duration of the semester you will learn how to do. And that's Command J. Now I can turn off that background image. And I have this one that I plan on working on. So now what I want to do is I can see that this image is a nice image. It's sharp and it's crisp, but it's kind of dark. And I need to boost it up a little bit. I need to increase the contrast between my lights and my darks to make the colors, lighter, brighter, more vibrant. So there's a variety of tools that we have available for us here. We have brightness, darkness in the adjustment panel. We have our levels, and we have curves. Each of these do the same thing, but a little bit differently. So let's see, I'll go ahead and I'll start with brightness, contrast. Now, the reason these are important, as soon as I click that, you'll notice that it added this adjustment layer directly above the image that I'm working on, but you don't see any change, okay? It's important to note that all of these adjustment layers that are available here are non-destructive, and that's important. So that if I click and I start on auto to get me started, okay, notice that it gets me very close to this image. It knows pretty much where we have to go with this. We might want to make it a little bit brighter, so I can make some slight adjustments to that, take it up to the 90, 86, 87 level, okay? And I can also, click on, let's see, let's go back here. So now that I'm looking at that, I can go back to adjustments and I can click on this layer again. And when I do, I want to look at the properties panel. Let's look at the adjustments layer. No, let's go back at properties. Why is it not showing up here? Let's go back here. I want to double click on this. No, that's not getting me there. Okay, well, that's good enough. Well, that's right. I'm thinking of something different. Anyway, that's it for brightness contrast. And now that you'll notice that we have pretty much matched our final version. So that's the first thing. And again, you can always turn it off and go back to the original version at any time. So that's pretty nice. And so let's go ahead and let's turn this back up here. So we have that done. So that's one of the basic things that we're going to do. In addition to that, as I said, we have a couple of other adjustment layers that we could be using. So I'll turn that one off. And it's important also to note that these adjustment layers, if you're not careful, affect every layer beneath it. And there are ways around that to affect only the layer directly beneath it. We will cover that later. And so let's try levels for right now. And you can see if you look at this, this graph that we have available for this, that there are hardly any highlights here. This little tab indicates where your lights are, and here are your midtones, and here are your dark tones to the left. And everything is from middle to dark. Well, if I click auto again, notice that it pushes the lights over to the right, and it's close, but it's not as good as that brightness contrast one. But again, I can fiddle with that. I can bring this up lighter a little bit. I can also bring the midtones, a little bit darker, and I can adjust and make my darks a little bit. So all of this can be adjusted by hand, or you can go back to auto. So far, I kind of like the brightness contrast best. The one with the best, I think that has the most sophisticated choices for adjusting this would be curves. So I'm going to use curves right now. And again, to get me started, I'm going to go with auto and see what it does. And that gets me pretty close. But you'll notice with curves, I have these eyedroppers to the left. If I hover over the bottom one, this tells me that if I want to set the, let's see which one. This is I can't remember whether this is the light or the dark point. I think this is the light point here, or white point. It's the white point. So I'm going to find the whitest area here in my photograph, and I'm going to click. Notice that that's a little too bright. Maybe I need to go in here. And that's not right either. And if I get stuck with any of this, I can always reset. Let's find the lightest light in here. So maybe that's right here. You can click around a bit until you find something that's suitable. That's a good one. And then let's go to the top one and let's find the darkest dark. And that would be clearly in the shadows here. And that darkens that. And I think this solution, if you look at the rows on the left, actually looks better than the finished version on the right. So my choice would be curves over brightness contrasts and over levels. How do you know which to use? You have to test, trial and error. Experience will tell you, and you will develop preferences. The other thing that you'll need to do is just, depending on the uniqueness of the image that you're working on, is just trial and error, try different things. So there we have that. So we've introduced adjustment layers. And if I want to throw these away, which maybe I do, I'll leave the brightness contrast, but I'm going to throw levels away. I'll just drag it into the little trash can here. And I want to delete, no, I don't want to delete the mask. Yeah, I want to delete the whole thing. There we go. So it's gone. So that's how you get rid of it. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to create this little banner here. Well, there's a variety of ways that you can do that. And my recommendation is that you never work on the background layer, because if you do, for example, if I paint on this, or maybe let's say I erase on this, watch what happens. Notice that it erases all the way back to the transparent pixels. Well, that would be true if I created something on there like this banner. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new blank layer to work on. And if I click on this little tab here, that will do that. There's a couple of ways to work. I have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to show you my preferred way of working instead of the way the book tells us to do it. So my preferred way of working would be to work with a vector component down here. And I'm going to work with the rectangle tool down here. And by doing that, I can throw this layer away, because if I worked with bitmaps, it would fill on that blank layer. But here, I'm going to work with something called a shape layer. And I'm going to try to match what they've done over to the right. And I'm going to click and drag like so. And it fills with black, doesn't it? Well, what I can do is I can double click on here, and I can bring up the color picker. And right now it's set to black, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click something in between here. I'm going to click inside and try to find a color that's dark enough that matches pretty close to what I have in here. And if I don't find it and it's not dark enough, I'll just go ahead and make it darker like so. So I can adjust it. I'm going to pick this new one here. Okay. So let's go ahead and click there, and let's make sure. Why is it doing that? I have normal layer. It's not picking the color that I want. So I'm going to go back again and open that back up. And I'm checking to see if there's something else that I have selected that isn't allowing me to pick the color that I want. It says this is the current color that's here. And that's the one that I want. So why isn't it filling? I have normal opacity, I have normal 100% fill. Let's move this up like so. And see, there we go. Remember I told you, I know why, that these adjustment layers affect everything beneath it. Well, that was beneath it. So it was lightening that color up, and I just wasn't thinking. So if I move that layer up, now it matches the one above. So now I'm in good shape. Okay, so this gives me the approximate height and width of it, but I don't have the little chisel in here. So what I want to do is I want to edit this. And I can edit this by going to the move tool, or I can use the pen tool here. And what I want to do is I want to add an anchor point to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to add a little anchor point to that. And now I can take the move tool here, and I can move that anchor point in. Whoops, I didn't want to do that. I need to take the direct selection tool. So let's deselect, let's go back here, let's click again, and I'm going to pull that in like so. But notice that it's curved. I don't want it curved, I want these to be straight lines. So these are, for those of you who have worked with vector programs before, this is very similar. This is a Bezier curve. And now what I can do is I can come under here again. Let's pick that same point, and let's pick under here. Oh, come on. Oh, there we go, right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick the convert anchor point tool. And I'm going to click right there, and boom. It changes it from a curve point to a corner point. So I'm set. Now I've added that. Notice that it's on its own layer, I can turn off and turn on, independent of this one and this one. So that would be one way to work. And if there's time today, in a couple of minutes, I will show you another way of doing that. Now we need to add the word Elaine. So I'm going to make sure that I have my rectangle that I just created selected, or that layer selected, so that when I add text, it will be, because every time you add a new element, it automatically adds it like an adjustment layer or whatever, it adds it immediately on top of the layer that is currently selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go to this finished version and I'm going to select text. And you can see what it's done. It has picked up the last selection that was used for the text tool, which is Minion Pro Italic 32 point with this yellow color. And that's the color that we want. And I can make all of those changes here in the character panel. That's why I have it up. But if I want to cheat and I want to hurry up and get a finished version of this right away, I can do that because now I can select, go back to my, my file here, the start file. And now I can, with text selected, notice that it kept all of those features. Now what I can do is I can click anywhere. It doesn't matter. I don't have to click on top here. I can click anywhere. And I can, it puts in Greeking for me, and now I can type in Elaine. And when I'm done, I can either use the checkbox, or I can double hit the return key, or I can go back to the move tool, and then I can move it into position like so. Now, text, which is this tool here, allows me to, because it is vector, is that I can at any time change the font, I can change the color, I can change the size, and it will adhere to the resolution that I've used to create this particular image. There's a couple of more things that I did last semester that you may want to kind of watch the video that I created last semester. And I believe I showed everybody how to insert the texture. It's in this one into here, but we're running kind of short on time here. What I will do though is we have a few minutes left, is I'll show you the way the book made this little banner here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn that off. And I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new layer. And I'm going to put it below the text layer. Okay, so that's empty. So what I want to do now is I could go ahead and I could create, I'm trying to remember what they used. I could use the box tool. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use under here the Polygonal Lasso tool. Okay, so I'll do that. So to do that, I'm going to click right here, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key. And what the Shift key does is that it constrains the movement to vertical 45 degrees or horizontal. So now I can click, and now I can move this in like so. And it's creating a polygon shape. And I can click in the middle here. I can click back. Okay, and I'm holding down. I'm going to go ahead and move this down like so. And this is where the problem lies, because now this is off a little bit. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click again. Now I'm going to hold down the Shift key and click again and come back to the beginning and click again. Now I have what are called the marching ants. Okay, so this doesn't work so hot. And if I want to fill it with a foreground color, I will go ahead and I'll click here. And I'm going to go ahead and create a foreground color. And again, I'll pick from here. And it changes it over here in my color box. And if I hit Option Delete, it fills it with that color. Now I can go ahead and I can hit Command D to deselect. I can use the Move tool, and I can move this wherever I want. But you'll notice that my the little indentation here is off center, and it's a little bit more difficult to fix because all of this is in pixels. Okay, it's not like the one that I created with the rectangle. Because with a rectangle, I can change this shape at any time because this is vector. So it's for these flat two-dimensional shapes, it is much easier to work. Again, with the direct selection tool, I can come back and I can click here, make sure that I have the right layer selected. Let's turn that back. Oh, let's make sure that it's selected. There we go. Click here. And if I wanted to change this like so and make it more of an arrow shape, I could do that. Can't do that with the pixels. It's much more difficult. And I can hit Command Z to undo and deselect. So there you have it. Some basic tools, basic panels, kind of a starter file for us to create a little postcard, using a variety of tools from some of the adjustment layers to correct the brightness contrast of the image. And all of this is done non-destructively, working on separate layers. So we've introduced layers. And in addition to that, I've introduced, which they don't in the lesson, in the textbook itself, shape layers, but that's useful. Color panel, changing, being able to change colors and that sort of thing. So we've hit the 3 o'clock hour and we're pretty much done today. Before we leave today though, if there are any questions, please let me know and I can unmute you and let you speak. And then I will pause the recording. I hope I started the recording. Yeah, I did. So do you have any questions for me before we leave today? Yes, no? I believe the YouTube videos are for the 2020 textbook. They really haven't made, I'm answering Natalie's question about, says, are the YouTube videos for the 2020 textbook? Yes, I believe they are. But really since 2018, they really haven't made too many changes in the textbook. So really, if you had an older version of Photoshop, an older version of the textbook, it would probably work for us. But the lessons that I have available for you that are in Google Drive should be for the 2020 version. And at any time, if you have an issue and you want something that's more current, I don't have the 2021 textbook, but I have all the textbooks that are, the prior textbooks. So I can get lessons for those as well. Does that answer your question, Natalie? Anybody else? I know I went very quickly, but the recording of this, when I'm done, I will pause it. I'll save it and I'll put it on the folder for us for this semester. And you can also look at last semester's as well and go over it step by step. And then, as soon as you get the textbook, you can go over that as well. Okay. So if there aren't any questions about what I covered, I know I went very quickly. Don't worry about that because you can always replay this at a later time, later date. That will be it. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording. And I'm going to wait for all of you to